Today on CEO Barbecue, we're looking for copper in Kazakhstan together with Arras Minerals. For a bullet point summary of this and all other CEO interviews, please go to resourcetalks.com and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. The company you're about to hear from has paid us for the production of this interview, but this interview is still intended only for experienced speculators because this is venture capital and mining is a very risky industry where failure is the norm. All conversations are general and impersonal in nature, and they contain forward-looking statements. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and my business sells content-producing services, which also makes me biased. So before continuing on, please talk to an independent investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital is at risk, and also visit setterplus.ca where you'll find the company's official filings. If you're not 100% sure you understand all the biases and the disclaimers that I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said herein. That all said, Darren, I want to start with you and talk to you about what happened with the company over the last 12 months. If I were sitting here just the same time a year ago and asked you what you're hoping to achieve, what would you have told me back then? What were the objectives 12 months ago?
So it was only 12 months ago when we put out our first set of results from Elemes. And so we think about, how important the last 12 months have really been. But in particular, it was just 12 months ago when we put the first set of results out after that 11-hole program that we had done, and announced, pretty interesting outcomes on new discoveries. And so for us, that was really the launching point, I think, for us. Remember, the land package that we've put together and the work that we've done over the last couple of years, we're really working in areas that for the most part have not had a lot of modern exploration, and so getting ourselves to a point where we had targets, we were able to test them, and then obviously have come up with some pretty interesting things to follow up on. So that was probably a key takeaway from 2025. Another I think objective for us was to be able to leverage that from the perspective where we could raise capital and then really kick off a phase 2 program, which we were successful in doing as well. In some regards, much before the broader sort of junior market, for example, has moved on. But we've had very good support in that financing from not only our current shareholders but new institutional investors that obviously took interest and had a lot of comfort around what we were doing in Kazakhstan. And then as we've exited the year now, obviously we've been able to continue with that phase 2 program. We drilled another 10,000 meters, and I think now importantly what we've seen come out of those results, whether it be at Berezski North, Berezski Central, Berezski East, we're still getting surprises to the upside, but we're now call it 28, 30 holes into this, and we announced last week, of course, 12 months on from that first set, where we're doubling the drill rigs. We're now expanding that phase 2 program, and our objective obviously is going to be to continue to move forward and build out scale and size now.
I definitely want to talk about your 2026 plans, but Tim, I'll come to you now to talk about technically what was achieved. What do you now know about the project that you didn't know 12 months ago, and how significant is it?
Well, I think, first of all, one of the reasons why we went into Kazakhstan was based on a fairly well-known idea. It's extremely prospective geology. What I think we've proven to ourselves is that how we're approaching exploration has been quite successful. Starting with the Elemes Project, which certainly had some historical Soviet information around it, but what we've managed to achieve just with a systematic step-by-step approach is define something that is starting to turn into potentially a significant find. And as Darren pointed out, the first program 12 months ago was only 10 holes, and we made some genuine new discoveries. 2025 was followed up with that, and as we continue to grow both the size or the footprint of the discovery, I think we're now starting to get our heads around sort of what the mineralization and the controlling factors on that mineralization are. So Elemes was our main focus in terms of where we put a lot of our drilling work. However, we also have a much larger regional package, part of which we had under a strategic alliance with Teck, and some of it was under our own steam. And just applying those first principle exploration techniques, a whole number of new targets are emerging there as well. So I think in terms of sort of an unexplored porphyry belt, I don't know of too many other places in the world that actually have that potential.
Yeah. I'm typically pretty good at pretending to understand all the geology. What if we were to simplify that, though? What was the main unanswered question that you had about the geology last year that is now answered?
I think the main unanswered question was, is there what would be considered ore-grade mineralization over a significant footprint or a big enough footprint that deserves follow-up? And I think last year answered that question. So as we move into this year, we'll be looking to expand and define sort of that mineralization.
Darren, I'll run it back to you here. Looking at the stock price from about a year ago, it almost seems like it's been in limbo, but not actually quite, because it had a lot of ups and downs, and it's up a little bit, but not a whole lot relative to the market. What do you think is causing that? Why is it not up more?
You know, the stock was up 168% last year. And so, you know, you say that in just about any sort of space, you'd say that's actually probably a pretty good return. And we chart ourselves against, you know, a group of peers, and we were kind of just above the midpoint in terms of the middle of the pack. Yeah. But most of that gain obviously came in the first half of the year when really your broader sort of junior, particularly in the precious metal space, hadn't really moved yet. I think there's no doubt that, you know, with the strong movement that we had far and away, you know, probably in advance of most of the peers, there was an opportunity for some investors, particularly retail investors, to take money off the table and invest it in a gold price or a silver price that was going up very quickly. And so I think from that perspective, we've probably lagged a little bit in the back end of the year, and that's what I think we could point to. But having said that, I mean, we have the capital we need really for our program this year. I think we've demonstrated, as Tim was mentioning, that we're finding ore grade intercepts near surface in an environment that we know is just so supportive and very easy to get projects up and running and built and operating. And so if we can find more of what we've found this year, which of course we're backing ourselves and fully believe we will, then, you know, we're going to be just fine. I think that this is going to be an important part of the year for us here over the next 12 months. You know, I think the share price should reflect that as well.
Mm-hmm. There also seems to be a bit of a strategy reset maybe after Biscoga, if I could call it that, or maybe not. But talk to me about Biscoga. Why did you walk away? What changed? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think from our perspective, you have to remember that, you know, 4 years ago when Arras first came into the country, and we've talked about this as well, our overall thesis was this is a place that we felt that we could really put our boots down and grow, and get in early, you know, establish ourselves, and that was really the opportunity, right? I mean, it was an option on a project that was more advanced. It was the first thing that Tim had been introduced to, but the broader strategy really was to say, okay, well, now that we're here, what else can we potentially look at? And I think it's fair to say that over the last 24 months, clearly Elemes and that Elemes project had continued to kind of move to the front in terms of the potential that we saw there, and we were able to start demonstrating that, as I said, 12 months ago. And so, you know, for us, Biscoga was still very much an exploration project that still required a lot of dollars and a lot of time. And a $15 million, you know, U.S. option payment, which for us, we really felt, you know, we were much better to take that and put that towards new discovery at Elemes. And ultimately we've done that. And I think that's definitely been the right call. And I think we'll continue to see that being the right call as we move forward.
So it's not so much the assets or the terms of that deal, it's more of a capital allocation decision.
I think it's always a capital allocation decision. I mean, you know, capital is not indefinite. It particularly was a capital allocation decision up until, say, the last 6 or 7 months in this market that we're in. Everything in our space is always a capital allocation decision, but it's the right decision for us because, you know, as Tim mentioned, we're really only scratching the surface on some of these even other opportunities beyond Elemes. And even at Elemes itself, I mean, we see plenty of roadway here to build out potentially a district in an environment that's one of the lowest cost environments in the world to not only drill holes, but to operate mines. And at a time, I think, globally, where it's easy to point to opportunities, but at the end of the day, the minerals need to come out of the ground, and I think there's very few places in the world today that are as easy to operate and as really critical minerals and have a strategy in place as you see in Kazakhstan. And that's the reason why you're continuing to see more and more majors arrive, and that was our thesis, and that's happening.
Yeah. Capital is definitely not indefinite, but in this market, it almost feels like it might be. How much money do you have right now?
So we're sitting just between 12 and 13 million Canadian in the bank, yeah.
What are you going to spend that on?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the program plan and the expansion of phase 2.
Okay. Tim?
Yeah, well, I think we just had we're in Vancouver now having a strategy session exactly on that. And, I think this year you'll see the prime focus remain on Elemes. We've got 2 rigs showing up in early February. They'll be on that on Elemes full time, and we expect to have another 2 rigs showing up in March. And it's a big target. One of the things that you discover when you start drilling a target of this size is how small a drill hole actually is relative to, say, an almost 9-kilometre target. So we do have a lot of follow-up work and targets to define, as well as working on what we know and expanding that mineralisation. So short answer to your question, though, is drilling on Elemes, and then I do want to make sure we keep looking on a regional scale and looking probably to follow up some of those targets with some drill holes as well, because that's actually the opportunity here is there more to find? And I think as we get to know this land package more, there's no question that's the case.
I remember when I came at site, there was one operational rig and a second one starting to get going. You had a lot of money. You still have a lot of money today, but you had even more money back then. And you were still kind of hesitant to go at it with 4 or 5 or more rigs. What's changed? Why is now the right moment to double the number of rigs?
Well, I think what's changed is the market. We've been in a capital-starved environment for quite a long time. I think the move up on all commodity prices has sort of opened up the market to new money coming in, and that's when you do want to put the jandal down and go to work.
Mm-hmm. Where do you go drilling first on within Elemes? Well, I suppose Elemes is going to be the first thing that you're going to drill. So when and what's the specific target?
Well, we've got 3 main targets: Berezski Central, which is very much true porphyry sitting at surface. We've got Berezski North, which is a very high grade breccia pipe, again sitting at surface. And then off to the side of Berezski Central, we've got what we call Berezski East. Could probably get more creative with our names. And that seems to be a gold only or gold rich, let's call it, area that I think is not as well understood, but is something we'll be putting some time into understanding.
Don't get more creative with it, but as someone who follows like hundreds of companies and does hundreds of these interviews, that helps me keep a mental map better than most other things out there. So don't get too creative with it. How much step out versus infill?
Well, I think it's got to be a balance. So we've got, if you look at Berezski North and Berezski Central, there's 5 kilometres with a strong copper anomaly linking them with 1 drill hole within that 5 kilometres. But equally, we are getting to the point on the Elemes project where we know we've got some big systems here. Now the question is, how big is it, and what can this be a mine? So I'd say if I was to allocate the drilling, probably 70-80% will be on those areas developing the resource, and then we'll have a budget for stepping out and finding out what's in between.
Well, you say how big is it, but what is it in the first place? Is it a main porphyry center? Is there multiple? Is it a porphyry with an epithermal cap cluster, or what's this thing?
Well, from sort of discussions we've been having till now, what we think it is it's a 9-kilometre trend. We know we've got 9-kilometre copper anomaly, I should say. We know we've got 2 known porphyry centres in it. It appears to be a structurally controlled corridor, so if I was to sort of categorise it, it's probably a structurally controlled cluster of porphyries coming up. You know, a lot of the big districts in Chile are exactly this. It's not just one big porphyry, it's multiple porphyries along a corridor.
How Oyu Tolgoi-esque is this looking, like on a scale from 1 to Oyu Tolgoi?
Well, where Oyu Tolgoi is structurally controlled, it is a series, or they called it the string of pearls, or clusters of porphyries. The only thing we're missing is the 3% copper and 2 grams gold. Yeah. But hopefully that's coming.
Still early days, right? Because I think when you look at that, it's a good point, because I think there's 11 kilometers of strike and 7 known porphyries, right? Mm-hmm. So again, we're 12 months into this. Yeah. Well,
it's funny, really. I feel like I've known you guys for a long time because we've communicated so much over the last 12 months. Maybe even before that. I think I met you even before that, Darren. But it's a lot of work has happened, but it is still early days.
There's a lot of overnight successes in our industry sometimes that, folks don't realize, because, as things change, markets change, and all of a sudden you look at something, it's like, oh, this is done so well. But when you look back and you peel back the pages of the book, it could be 15 or 16 or 17 or 18 years of work that was tried and toiled, and then they got to the point. I mean, even Oyu Tolgoi, for example, I was a whole 130 or something that main discovery was made at Hugo Dummett, right? And so it's pretty rare that, somewhere in the first 8 holes, all of a sudden, the world changes. But, we're in the right part of the world in order to kind of achieve that, particularly in an environment where there's not much for geology to see at surface. And as Tim mentioned, like we have a high level of confidence that our model's working. And like we know that with the geochem and the geophysics, we're finding porphyry systems that, otherwise are trapped underneath the steppe and you can't see them. And so it gives us a lot of confidence to keep moving. These targets are, quite substantial, and we're just scratching the surface right now.
How much money have you spent in Kazakhstan to date, if you had to? I don't know if you have that off the top of your head, but
I would think probably we're 20 million, something like that, in terms of expenditure.
Total expenditure, including corporate G&A.
Yeah. So
they're near about 100 million market cap.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, but it's still early days. And your dollars, obviously, as we know, go further there. I mean, that's, again, going back to the point earlier, this is the reason why I think you're seeing more and more majors arrive. There's not too many jurisdictions where you can realistically look and say, like, there hasn't been much modern exploration over the last 30 years. You've got a mining law that we're all comfortable with because it looks the same as Ontario, Quebec, or Western Australia. And then most importantly, and I think this is the thing that often gets mixed, but most importantly, it's a country where minerals are getting mined and brought out of the ground, right? Kazakhstan's top 10 in the world for most of the things that we're using every day. And we can look in a lot of places and drill holes and make great discoveries, but we all know that on average it takes 15 to 20 years at least from discovery to actually see the stuff come out of the ground, and the world needs more copper today. And we're backing the fact that Kazakhstan is one of the easier places to operate and get to that point.
I'd also add, Kazakhstan is a mining culture. So when you're showing up, you're not having to spend a lot of time educating the locals as to what a mine is. And, the knock-on of that is there's actually a lot of talent in the country that you can bring on board. So you're not having to import that talent either.
Yeah. Well, even at Equibus 2's, when I came to your guys' office and the house where you stay, I just I flew the drone from the house over the huge open pit coal mine there. So it's right there. It's indeed in the culture.
It still has 100 years of reserves too.
Yeah. That thing is a monster. I mean, it's when did they start mining it? In the
1954.
Okay, and they've mined 4 billion tons.
Yeah.
Okay.
And going. I mean, it says a lot when your waste dumps are the highest geographical features.
For miles. Yeah, exactly. It's no, I mean, I think these are intangibles that become very tangible in our space, right? And if we look around, at all the majors right now, I mean, no one knows where the copper is going to come from that we need. I mean, the S&P report that S&P Intelligence put out here 10 days ago talked about having to increase the copper production over the next 14 years by 50%. We don't even know where if we maintain status quo, where it's going to come from, right? And so, yes, you need to find them, but you need to be able to build them and develop them and do so in a way that actually brings these critical minerals to market so we can use them. And Kazakhstan, I think, is placed as well as anywhere.
Tim, I want to go back to talking about the drilling here because we didn't talk much about depth. You want to compare this to Oyu Tolgoi. Depth will also be should be within the context. So yeah, talk to me about how deep you want to drill it and compare that to Oyu Tolgoi.
Well, because our mineralization starts at surface, the beauty of that is you don't have to go looking for it. You're collaring in many cases in mineralization. Bulk of our drill holes to date have sort of been in the 400 to 500 meter category. However, over 2025, we did a gravity MT survey over the entire prospect, and that has revealed a whole number of deeper targets that, to use the Oyu Tolgoi analogy, the top of that was 800 meters depth and went down to 1600 meters. So, part of what we'll look to do is maybe test some of those targets, because if you take Berezski Central, that's not the guts of the porphyry. What we're looking at there is what we'd call a phyllic zone, which is typically marginal to where the porphyry is. So we're still looking for that core, and some of the geophysics is pointing to where that might be.
Mm-hmm. What about Imandai? I personally quite like the target. I went to see it. There was azurite and malachite just lying on the ground. So, I mean, again, I'm not a big brain geologist, but it looked pretty decent to me. Are you going to go drill that?
Yeah, we will. And it's a bit of a blessing and a curse. We do have so many targets on the Elemes prospect, and they're big. And so part of what we were trying to do with Imandai, it's a 14-kilometre long copper anomaly that we're trying to boil that down into something that's more of a bite-sized chunk, because you can blow your brains out chasing something that big. So, a good portion of the work last year was spent just trying to tighten up that target and give us something, a little more practical to chase with the drill rig.
Yeah. I don't want to get too technical here, and I know maybe the three of us and Matt might sit down for a more of an in-depth conversation later on. But what about geometry? Do you feel like 2026 is going to tell you more about the geometry of what you have there, and maybe time to start talking about true width as well? But yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, one thing I think 2025 showed us was Berezski Central is deeper in the system. We're in true porphyry style mineralization. As you move north into Berezski North, you're in more of a breccia pipe, which suggests you're higher in the system there. So we've probably got something that's tilted towards the north, and so you'd expect the porphyry to be at depth in Berezski North. However, what we've also found out about geometry of that breccia pipe is it's also tilted. So instead of just going straight down, what we might want to do is move further back, and in this case towards the south. Mm-hmm. So that's a work in progress, but it's certainly one of our considerations when we're drilling.
What are you looking forward to the most in terms of drilling? What do you think is going to be the most important hole that you're going to drill in 2026?
the one with the best grade. It's,
really for us, it's all about getting to the point now where we can, you talk about geometry, I think, Berezski North, we've got 6 holes into it, right? It's still very early days, but, let's not lose track of the fact that what we are seeing in this drilling is as good, if not better, than what's 40 clicks down the road at one of the lowest cost copper mines in the world. And that's the Arras Minerals copper gold mine that is producing copper at 0.3% copper and 0.1 gold. So for us, if we can continue to find results that are in that sort of realm, and then give the analysts, for example, a bit more geometry that they can actually put together, size and scale and grade, then I think for us we're going to be on our way to be able to demonstrate that we've got a mine in the making here, right? Even though it does take some time.
Yeah. What do you guys think is the size potential at Elemes? Maybe Tim, I'll go back to you. But what are we talking about here? If this is forward-looking, but if this works out the way you hope it does, what's the size potential?
Well, when you're looking at size potential, you always look at the analogy of another deposit in the same rocks. And so we're literally less than 50 kilometres away from Boschikol, which right now is a billion-tonne porphyry that could probably go to 3 billion tonnes if they wanted to put the drilling meters into that. So that immediately gives you sort of parameters of what a porphyry could look like. So if you look at Elemes, right now it's a 9 kilometre long anomaly. We know we've got multiple porphyry centres there. That starts to put us in Boschikol type scale. But I think because of the way Kazakhstan is, it's very flat, infrastructure is straightforward. I think what's unique here is you don't have to have 1 billion tonne project. You could have a 200 million tonne project here, 5 kilometres away have a 400 million tonne project, and combine them and treat them as one project in general. So, in the spoke model that is often used in a place like Arizona. So, we think for this to be of significance for a big company, you got to be looking at 2 to 3 million tonnes of contained copper. Whether that's in one deposit or a few deposits that are close together, I think is neither here nor there.
And you and I have talked about the KCA, the Kazakhstan cost advantage, right? Which makes mine like Boschikol work at 0.3. What's that internal walk-away grade, if you will, for you? What's something that if you see that in core, you'd be like, we did good work, but that's still not good enough. Where's that cutoff?
Well, again, I'd use Boschikol as the benchmark there. At 0.3 copper and 0.1 gold, it's, as Darren said, it's a top quartile copper producer. So, what that's telling you is you could find something at a lower grade and still be in the top half in terms of cost advantage of pounds produced, which I think is why Kazakhstan's so unique. You don't have to have one of these super high grade porphyries to make money. You can do extremely well with what is traditionally called low grade.
Yeah. What are the timelines behind this? When are you thinking you're going to be restarting drilling? When do you think some assays are going to come in?
So, as I said, drills show up at the beginning of February. The team is a coiled spring. We're ready to get going immediately. And I don't see us stopping drilling until the end of the year.
Okay. Isn't it like minus 20 or something there now?
Well, minus 30 actually.
Okay. Wow.
that kind of temperature's fine so long as you're not the one in it.
That's fair. How do you think about talking to the market about the results? I suppose, Darren, that's also where you come in. do you want to batch everything and tell a fulsome story, or are you going to go hole by hole, play it by ear?
Look, I think by adding the drills now as well, as we get to 4 drills, one of the things I think we have to do a better job on, just based on the scale that we have here is, when we think about Berezski North and Berezski Central, they're 5 kilometers apart. A lot of companies our size would probably be pointing to their neighbor's land package, 5 kilometers away. So for us, focusing on these areas and being able to create a follow-up story for Berezski North, and then a follow-up story for Berezski Central based on the drilling, I think would be our objective. Clearly, obviously, we need to make sure that we've got news flow, but the added drills are going to help with that. And we've got plenty of targets, as Tim was mentioning. So I think that would be our objective, and one would expect that we would see news flow to be kicking up at even a faster clip as we get into the back end of Q1 and early Q2.
Yeah. Plenty of targets, though, as we just talked about. There's Berezski Central, Berezski North, East. There's Imandai, Novi. How do you rank them? And I think maybe Tim, you come in or whatever. But yeah, how do you rank them?
Well, I think my sense is you kind of don't need to get too cute about it. What you do is you focus on one. And obviously, if you're getting success, you keep going with the view that you've got these other targets out there and you do need to test them. So for us, Berezski Central and Berezski North were the obvious 2. That's why we're drilling those. But as we learn more about the geology, get more data, we're seeing Novi and Berezski East start to present an interesting opportunity as well. So that's a long-winded answer of saying we just take them as we come at this point and test them and then adjust priorities accordingly.
And that is the geological and the scientific approach as well, I suppose. And there, this one might be for you, but the market is rarely rational and definitely not scientific. So what about from a market perspective? What do you think the market is going to care the most?
I think that gels. I mean, like for us, Berezski, if we're sitting here right now and we're going to place our bets, I mean, Berezski Central and Berezski North look like they're on their way to becoming deposits, right? And at the end of the day, I talked about earlier, the fact is our objective here as explorers is to find things that are a deposit or deposits that can grow that ultimately we think have a chance of becoming mines. And so that's what's leading the bus right now. But equally, I mean, because we're still in the same trend, we're learning, as Tim mentioned. I mean, and our geology team is learning when we drill holes and we get data points back because we can compare them to these areas. This is the the art and the science where it comes together. It's the Rubik's Cube you're trying to solve, and so all this helps us, I mean, to better understand what's going on, even though again we're only 12 months into the first set of results. So it's all helpful, but that's what drives the bus. If we can sit here 12 months from now in Vancouver and report back and say, look, we were able to expand and increase our drilling. We've got good results that have come back. We're now looking at 2 deposits, but oh, by the way, again, porphyry systems, multiple porphyry centers along a trend. Maybe there's something else as well that's also developed that's actually adding to that, because as Tim mentioned, most mines are moving dirt, waste, rock, a few kilometers, to the plant. And I mean, I think for us, if we had a string of surface mineable pits that were 200-300 million tons each, and we can see that potential right now just in those 2 areas, this is going to be pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to ramp up marketing this year to talk about that new maybe refocus of the company, or what are you going to do for marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's necessarily a refocus. I think obviously, we're ducking and weaving a little bit based on, what we're seeing. One thing that I think, we still have to continue to go on and educate folks about is just our experience in Kazakhstan. There aren't a lot of other juniors there, so having folks like yourself come over and have a look and come back and share, I mean, that always helps. So obviously having video work and that sort of thing to share it. No doubt this last year was really when we started to see institutional investors come into the stock, and so we absolutely need to make sure that we're able to kind of differentiate ourselves, particularly around the quality of the assets, because as more and more folks, I think, get comfortable or come over and visit or sit down with us us and hear our stories around our experience in Kazakhstan over the last 4 years, you quickly come to a conclusion that this is probably much easier to operate and do things in than many other places that traditionally we're more comfortable with. You've seen it yourself, right? And so absolutely, we've got lots of opportunities to enhance the story, and we're going to be engaging with folks on it.
How much money are you looking to spend on marketing, and what percentage of G&A is that going to be?
I think probably our marketing budget against G&A is probably maybe about 25%, something like that, in that range. Obviously, we're going to PDAC. We're doing one-on-one investor meetings with institutions and retail. I mean, the social media is important now to try and differentiate yourself as well. It's always hard to measure. I mean, it's easy, I think, for folks to say, well, I'm spending X number of dollars, but how do you measure that, right? And I think you can very quickly spend money and not get much return. So it's absolutely important for us, and it's a key focus for sure. But we think we've got the results to back us on it. Yeah.
Do you think you might have to raise capital again later in this year? Do you might want to raise capital given where the market is?
That was part of the whole rationale last year when we raised money, is that it gives us enough capital really for what we need to do in 2025 and 2026. So we've got no warrants out. This is another thing that there's very few companies in our space where there's no warrants, because tend to what happens is you put out good news and then there's warrants being exercised and it keeps a lid on your stock. We've worked really hard to try and maintain a pretty tight share structure, and we've got the capital we need to do for this year and take us into early next year. So we'll obviously always be opportunistic, but yeah, we're focused on drilling holes and putting results out and creating what we think are going to be deposits, and then we'll figure out how we'll finance down the road. Yeah.
Do you think the money that you have right now will be enough for you to put it in? To put it on paper, to have an NI 43-101 out? I
don't think we haven't talked about necessarily putting a resource out straight away. I don't think we need to do that. I think if we can continue to demonstrate that we're getting consistent results, then the analysts and the many followers in the story can very quickly put around geometry around what this is and where it's headed. That's typically the way things kind of start out, necessarily than having to put out a resource. So.
Tim, what do you think about a resource? What kind of work do you want to have done before you come out with a resource?
Well, I think two things. So we will be doing some metallurgy this year on as rock comes out of the ground. To Darren's point, I don't think doing a resource immediately is necessarily what you want to do if you continue to drill mineralization. So one thing I do put a bit of thought in is, if you're going to drill though, and you're hitting mineralization, is it enough coverage in order to give you a category, whether that's inferred or M&I? So if you call that infill drilling, then that's infill drilling. But the focus right now is answering the question, how big is this?
Yeah. And how much more work do you think you might need to do that, or maybe in terms of capital or in terms of meters drilled? Yeah. Really, I can reframe that. But when do you think you're going to have it out, and how much more work is it going to be?
Well, the work is drilling, and then how much more drilling is needed is really going to be dictated by the results coming out of the ground. But then, I think the ultimate goal is to ultimately put a resource around this. So I think by the end of the year we'll have a much better view of what that might look like.
Okay. What is happening in the meantime is that you guys are working together with Teck Resources. What's going on there? How's the relationship progressing? What's the plan for that?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a great relationship. I mean, I think if we think about where we were 2.5 years ago, we had a very big land package. We still do, but it was clear to us as management and the board that realistically we couldn't finance going and doing a generative sort of exploration initiative across such a big land package. And so Teck was one of the groups that had stepped forward. There were others, but to their credit, they moved the quickest, and they've been a great partner. I mean, they have a very good track record and a very strong reputation on working with juniors, and so there's been a lot of synergies between Arras and Teck with this. Over 2024 and 2025, they funded $5 million of generative exploration work, which our geology team led, and they also inserted some of their geological talent into that team as well. So we've now seen that $5 million spent. It's definitely achieved the objective I think that everybody wanted, is that we've kind of gone from very early stage and relying on Soviet reports really to now generating targets, and some of those targets have had some very preliminary drilling. We caught up here very recently in a meeting with Teck, and I would expect that probably over the next few weeks we'll see an outcome as to whether or not Teck wants to move forward, at least in some way, shape, or form, with that next step, which is an option to then start investing up to $47.5 million per project. I think our initial takeaway is that we've been very pleased with regards to the fact that geologic model and approach has worked, because we're finding new porphyry terrains. But we're also cognizant that Teck's just gone through a pretty big merger with Anglo, and clearly thresholds can change, and sizes of targets can change, and that sort of thing. So nonetheless, we've got lots of new targets that 24 months ago we knew nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's exactly where I was going with this, is after this merger that's going on right now, is their size appetite going to change? And do you still think the targets they're working on with you on, do you still think those targets have that size potential?
I think it's tough to say, right? I mean, there's so many different moving parts with big companies like that. You see Teck and Anglo merge, you see rumors of Glencore and Rio Tinto, which have actually been substantiated putting together. You saw BHP interested in Anglo. This is all about pounds of copper and selling copper at $6 a pound, right? So the world is very focused on copper and copper pounds and producing copper and trying to get more access to advanced stage projects where we can see copper production. I mean, we're very early stage. I mean, that was the whole premise. That's the reason we came into the country, because we saw an opportunity to pick up a big swath of land in an area that was highly prospective, but it was early stage, right? So we'll have to see how that all comes together, but nonetheless, it's been a great partnership, and we obviously appreciate having Teck as a significant shareholder, and I know they're watching closely what we're doing at Elemes.
Tim, what about your relationship with them? I know you're on the ground a lot. You talk to the team that's there, but you also talk to their corporate team, I know. So yeah, what's your take?
Well, I think from a personnel point of view, they've been very useful in helping move these targets forward in a meaningful way. As Darren pointed out, I've got nothing but positive things to say about the experience. I guess for them though, there is the internal politics or discussions that we're not privy to, and I guess we just need to see what their next step is.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think is the biggest risk for 2026 and the plan that you've outlaid here? Tim, I'll start with you. Well,
I would say, the world is a little unstable right now, and some sort of black swan event could be on the horizon. That'll have a knock-on effect to the markets. Potentially positive. I mean, that can't be underestimated. And then for us, it's really just technical risk. We're in the business of exploration, and we all know that not every hole's a winner. So we've just got to stick to our knitting, follow the tried and true formula that we know is now working for us, and then get the steel spinning.
Darren, but on your end, what do you?
I mean, it's the same, right? I mean, at the end of the day, this is a treasure hunt, and so we're trying to figure out what was put there. We'll find it, but it's the geologic risk, and I think the patience and for us and our investors, I mean, I keep drawing back on the everybody always wants to move quicker, ourselves included. But again, we're really only 12 months into the first set of results here, and if we look at any of the peer companies that are out there that are more advanced, I mean, in many cases they've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years in front of us. We really like where we're at, and I think these next 12 months are going to be really important, and we're backing ourselves, and we appreciate the support from all of our shareholders and the patience to get there, but we think the reward at the end is going to be, has a chance of being very substantial.
So how should I judge you? Like if I come back next year, we do the same interview, what would you want to see in order to consider it a success? What do you want to be judged on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, can we turn this, phase 2 expansion that we're working on now, and going from, a scenario where we've got really interesting results that have started to evolve over this, the first, call it 10, 15,000 meters. And now we're staring at something that clearly we're adding more and more focus on, and we're seeing a deposit or deposits that are evolving. And if we can do that, I mean, based on what we've seen so far in terms of grades and widths, we know that these grades and widths not only work, but they would work very well in this country in terms of your overall cost structure. I think that's a home run.
Yeah. Tim, what about you? What should I judge you and the geology on?
Well, I think execution is a good mark. When we tell the market we're going to do something, we like to do it, and we work in the business of compiling opportunities and testing those opportunities so as efficiently as possible. So I think that ultimately is the measure of an exploration company.
I'm running on caffeine and granola bars on about a 10-to-1 ratio here, so I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff to ask you. What do you think I'm forgetting to ask here, Tim? What do you want to talk about that I'm not bringing up?
Well, I think one thing I think is, what else are you doing outside the current land package? And we spend a lot of time, particularly over the winter, continuously compiling reports, looking at sort of the even bigger land package and looking for those new opportunities. So in addition to everything else we've got going on, we've actually got that in the mix as well.
So we might see you pick up new projects or stake new ground in 2026?
I think you'll see us drop ground, and I think you'll see us pick up new ground as we progress here.
Same target though, again, northeastern Kazakhstan, or do you want to go someplace else?
Yeah, no, I think Kazakhstan's like any big country. If you get a project in West Kazakhstan, you might as well be in Quebec and have your operations in BC. So we're in basically an unexplored porphyry copper belt that we know has economic mines there, and I think there's very few opportunities left in the world like that.
Yeah. There, on your end, what am I forgetting to ask? What else did you want to talk about?
Why are you eating so many granola bars?
It's the quickest thing to eat with these conferences.
No, I mean, I think, really in summary, we've got a lot of opportunity this year. We've got the finance that we need to kind of move forward with that, and ultimately, 12 months from now, we're going to double the amount of drill results, more than that, in terms of that we've even put out, and this is a potential big step change for us at a time where, as I said, it takes 15, 20 years from discovery through to building mines, and for us, I think we're gonna see some material change here over the next 12 months on what we've been able to pick up on and really leverage that at a faster clip, just because we're getting more data points, right? We have a heck of a lot more data points today than we did 12 months ago, and even more so in the next 4 to 6 months and 12 months when we sit down as well. So this is what it's all about, right? This is the discovery part of the discovery, right? So.
Well, I'm sure we'll sit down for another in-depth conversation sometime soon, but it's time to go and enjoy the beautiful Vancouver weather in January. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. So unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."